Texture, texture, text. Oh, you caught me singing the texture song. I'm telling you, this is all about texture, and I just love working on this lesson. Today what we're working on is this worksheet that I've given you, and this is the preliminary work for the texture lesson. And here's a card that I have too. I've given you each 2 cards to look at, and I gave them to you for your virtual learners as well. But in the folder too, in the stream for the classwork, there are other textures you can look at and try to draw. On this texture worksheet, you'll notice that there is a texture handout that talks about different types of vocabulary for texture, which of course you learned about also in the PowerPoint or in the slides, as well as the texture video with the wonderful song, Texture, Texture. Also, you'll notice that there's this wonderful texture worksheet that gives you ideas of how to create the feeling of a 3-dimensional quality on a 2-dimensional surface. And that's really what we're trying to do with this texture lesson. So what I'm gonna do when I look at a card like this is I'm gonna take this item and put it in here. So I'm gonna kind of have the cameraman change angles here. The first thing I like to look at is where this card can be broken up into half and in half again. And I make the marks on my piece of paper as well. And this helps guide me of where everything goes. It's kind of like mapping out like we've talked about before. This is not quite halfway through here. So I'm gonna put down the basic shapes too, the basic idea of what we've done. And again, shapes make sense to say because we've dealt with shapes already, we've dealt with lines already, and now I'm coming in here and I'm dealing with value and texture. And again, the whole texture idea is really big. So I'm starting off with a really kind of rough draft and a rough feeling at first. This is looking like an eyeball. Sometimes you won't really know what you're looking at, and other times you will. You'll recognize something and say, well, how can I do that? So for this one, you can see that there's a real shiny area that'll have my pencil react to it differently than something that feels furry. So I have to change the way I hold my pencil to get different techniques out of my just regular number 2 pencil, if that's all you have. And notice I also have an eraser to do this lesson. The first thing I'm gonna do for something furry is like, look over here. They have a fur idea. It's a whole bunch of dashes that don't really overlap. And there's like a flick to your wrist when you do that. So I'm gonna come in this area and I'm gonna start to add this type of feel. Some of it had a little bit of gray underneath it beforehand, so maybe I'll put a little bit of value down so there's no negative spaces, there's no empty spaces. I'm gonna blend that a little with my finger. I think a little bit more of that. I'm noticing where there's really white areas too. So first I'm kind of putting the value down. So kind of those texture marks there I should probably not really do quite yet. So then I'm gonna go back. If you make the noises like that, it helps. And I'm watching my direction. I'm going out of the box right now, that's okay. And I'm noticing where it comes over here. I'm putting my pencil down, flick, 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 flick. The lighter areas I kind of left blank, but I'm also gonna go in with my eraser now. And you might have to cut that eraser that I gave you and have a nice, really like sharp edge to it. And I'm gonna come back in here and look at where it's lightest. And now I'm doing the same flick marks with my eraser. And it's making it look a little bit more furry. Then I like to kind of go behind it and give some of that a little bit more definition. And I'll keep working on that. The eye is quite different, right? I'm gonna look back in here and I'm kind of marking this out. And for this, I'm gonna use the side of my pencil and I'm gonna hold it like this. And I'm gonna put that value down first. Notice I'm going back and forth. This is much smoother. And I'm looking at that white area and I'm gonna leave that shape in here right now, kind of negative. And I'm putting this in here. And now I'm pushing darker once I'm pretty happy with how it looks. And I'll blend it with my finger too. And when I'm blending it with my finger or a tiny piece of paper towel, it's going to create a different, softer look than the jaggedness of the other. So I'm intentionally changing how this looks. Now, through the magic of editing, here's how this one looks. You can see that I was really looking at the light areas and the dark areas. Here there was a value down, like a value like this, that had been blended. And then for those dotty looking areas, use your eraser and put those dots back in. Doing texture is a real push and pull of materials. You know, again, if you're doing like a food, you may really want to put a whole value down first and then blend it. And then see where you need to erase little bits, like if that was a strawberry or something and you were doing highlights. And you can see how, or a drop of dew, you can see how you can get different types of texture just playing with your pencil. Okay, I hope that helps you guys. Good luck.